Jim, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to speak with me today.
My pleasure.
It's been a while in the making, and I'm happy that I finally get to ask you some questions about what it is that you do.
We just both needed to be in the same city at the same time.
That's
That's
right.
not easy, so.
Finally worked
Yeah,
out.
I'm glad it did.
Me too. You were here tonight with John Mellencamp.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about that first. How did the show go?
Great show. I mean, John's got a deep well of massive hits and, was a cultural figure through the 1980s and into the 90s. I mean, he's one of the best of our generation, right? So it's pretty cool to see him do his thing, and it's been great doing these tour dates with him. We have 17 in total, so going from Ontario all the way west and through BC and everything else. So we're pretty excited. Great tour.
And the fact that you're saying he's one of our best of the time, how does one get to work with one of the best? How did you get started back when you were 16?
So I've been in the business. I mean, I started 16 years old in broadcasting, so I started that, but I transitioned into this business about 20 years ago. Started as an agent. I'm still an agent. I represent Brett Kissel, Aaron Burchett, George Canyon, Gord Bamford, Emerson Drive, Carolyn Don Johnson, Charlie Major, Corey Marquardt, Jordan McIntosh. So got a good roster of artists that I represent. We manage some of those artists, and we manage Dan Davidson, and then we also promote shows. And the reason I wanted to become a promoter was twofold. One, I wanted to learn the trials, tribulations, struggles, and understand the side of the promoter business if I was going to represent artists and sell artists to promoters. I really wanted to know how that business worked, because then I could make the deals more advantageous for my artists, right? So that was very important for me, and really getting in there and being a practitioner, and not just sort of like learning from hearsay, but actually learning by getting in there and doing it. And then the second impetus was to buy tours every once in a while, have enough influence on the manager, the agent, the team to include one of the acts I work with or manage on the front end of that tour. And we've done that successfully over the years. We had Brett Kissel out with Brad Paisley, and Brad even took Brett up to Alaska. We had Corey Marquardt out with, Corey Marks, I should say, getting used to the new name, out with Brantley Gilbert. Kip Moore has been very kind and taken some artists out on tour, including Rivertown Saints, who I actually don't work with, but I just love those guys, and was thrilled to have them on that tour. So it's been an interesting journey, but one thing I've really learned is that we all need a trajectory. We all need something to work towards. We all need something to drive at. And so in this business, I've taken up the challenge of taking on new components of it, not only so I can be better at my core job, but so that I continue to grow, learn, develop, evolve.
And when you started in the broadcast industry at 16, you were pounding down doors and you were saying, "Let me on air." Mm-hmm. Did you ever expect to come to this side of broadcasting, come to this side of the job, and do what you're doing now?
I really have no musical background or talent, but I'm good with numbers. I've always been a people person. I love people. I can negotiate with them, and I love music. And I wanted to be around music, but I wasn't talented. So I needed to find another angle. And in the early part of my life, I thought, well, I could be one of those guys who talks on the radio. That's a great idea, be in broadcasting. So I went to the local radio station in Stettler, Alberta. I knocked on the door. They were hiring for weekend mornings, individual weekend mornings when you're 16 is rough because sports and partying, but I really wanted it. So I had zero experience. I'd done nothing but, grow up on a ranch, and I was in high school, and I talked my way into that job. A guy named Russell Thomas, who's a friend of mine to this day, hired me for it, and we still stay in touch. He's a great guy. And as I got further into my broadcasting career, I started spending more time around artists. And through that process, I just decided that I wanted to work even closer to them, and I really found nobility in the idea of helping them monetize their art. So that became a driver for me to encourage me to get further into that business.
And then comes along Invictus Entertainment Group. That was in 2011.
Yeah.
And you decide to start up this company. And what I really like is if you go through the list of people that you're involved with, it's all people that are really down to earth. They're very humble. They're great people that know what they're doing. They've got a great talent, but they've never let that get to their heads. The ones that I've had the pleasure of speaking with, they're just very much like you. Same sort of personality, outgoing, but know to stay close to the ground. Do you think that it's just sort of coincidence that you came across people like that, or those are the types that you were looking for?
Well, Louis O'Reilly, who I work with, always says we should work with artists based on two criteria: great art and great heart. And I love that line, and I've been living that for a long time, although Louis was able to articulate it and put it into words, and I love giving him credit for that. He deserves it. And I also think energetically, like, if you're doing good work and you're putting good energy into the business, and by the way, I know I'm not perfect. That's not what I'm saying, but I think then you attract certain people who want to work with that. They want to work with competent, quality people with a level of transparency and mutual respect. And we've been fortunate enough to continue to build that as we move forward.
And as you've moved forward, you guys have built a huge name for yourselves. You've won awards. Your name is, I think you were number one in Canada for entertainment groups?
Well, we did win a Canadian Country Music Award. We've actually won 17 total. This year we won for Management Company of the Year, and also I won for Talent Buyer Promoter of the Year, but that's a company-wide distinction as far as I'm concerned. We did win a distinction with the International Entertainment Buyers Association, which was a worldwide distinction, which was really cool. But honestly, I mean, the awards are great, but they don't pay the bills, right?
True story.
And on top of that, it's really dangerous to drink your own Kool-Aid in this business, right? So I'm a big fan of like celebrating that moment with my staff and high five, but it's like, okay, now let's fucking get back to work. Right? Yeah. Like, that's how we stay on top. It's not by pretending that we're the best, because too many people buy into their own hype in this business for sure. And competence and quality remains at the top of the hierarchy when it comes to providing services for artists. And we've got to always keep that in mind, no matter what's coming at us from the outside, whether it's accolades or whether it's criticism. And I think that same model applies to every artist out there.
And that's one of the things I like about you too, is, on Facebook, on your social media, you'll see where you do give credit where credit is due. Not only will you accept that award and be humble about it, but you'll thank your entire team. Aaron Pritchett won 2 awards at the BCCMAs. 5 awards.
Not to correct you, but he won 5, yeah.
I know that he won Artist of the Year and then Single. What were the other 3?
Male Artist of the Year, Single of the Year, Video of the Year, Entertainer of the Year, and Fans' Choice.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's so awesome. And it's, again, one of those just down-to-earth guys that you really have to give credit where credit is due.
Well, listen, Aaron hasn't had it easy.
No.
Like, he has fought his way to the top initially, sort of had this difficult period in his career where he was off the radio for a large part, and then he really has roared back and had all this success in what I feel is still the early stages. I still feel like there's 30 years ahead for Aaron Pritchett. I think he's got so much depth as an artist, and we need to continue to tap and explore that and allow him the creative autonomy to figure out what all of that is. But yeah, so when I see him get awarded, like, not only as a client but as a friend, I'm thrilled. He deserves the recognition, and frankly, he should be getting more at the national level. He's not getting the recognition he deserves at the CCMAs, and the Junos, and although the Junos, I think they gave him a nomination off the last album, so maybe that'll change as he continues to build his value. People will come around.
I think so.
Yeah.
It, like you said, it's been a long time coming.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's definitely the type of guy that deserves it, and you can see that through his music. But when you're talking to him, it's definitely there in his heart.
Yep.
Something that's in your heart. You'll go on social media and you'll actually give other people tips. You'll do videos and you'll put it out there and say, hey guys, what do you want to learn more about the music industry? And then you'll give them advice. What made you decide to help out your fellow people?
Well, I mean, I kept my head down for 20 years and ran multiple businesses, right? So I feel like at some point, if you don't feel like you're enough of an expert in your field to talk about the intricacies of your field, then maybe you shouldn't be in it. So that was one impetus. The second one for me was a big one, and that is that I see a lot of young artists, developing artists, not young artists, but people who are developing and kind of getting their feet under them as an artist and trying to figure out what to do. And there's not a lot of curriculum or courses or material available for them. So I thought if I could condense some impactful information between myself and some guests that I talk to, maybe we can arm artists in the early stages with enough empowering information so they make good decisions or better decisions, right? Because there are people in this industry on the business side who take advantage of artists. Now, here's the weird thing about it. I don't think a lot of them are doing it on purpose. I don't think they're malicious. I don't think they're trying to hurt anybody, but they just don't add value, and they continue to work with artists, and it's like, if I can give out free advice and that helps an artist with their own level of self-security to go, you know what, maybe instead of signing with a manager that has never done anything for anybody or an agent or whatever, right? Maybe I'll just continue to do this on my own, right? And I'm a big believer in that. Like, if you're an artist, you're the CEO of your own company. So you have to run it that way. And that means that maybe you don't need to do every job, but you need to know how every job is done. Because if you're going to, and the best way to do that is to have done it at one point, right? So if you want to know whether or not your agent is accountable, wouldn't it be great if for 3 years you booked yourself and you really understand the process, right? Same thing with management. Same thing to a degree with publicity, or radio tracking. So I'm a big fan of, hey, artists, do the things you don't want to do so that you get to do the thing you love, right? Build your value, grow your company to a place where it attracts the right partners, as opposed to the reactive approach where you're just scrambling around looking for someone to work with you because no one's interested, right? And then you end up with someone who just wants to exploit you, not help you. Build it yourself. Grow it. Nurture it. Be patient with it. If there's a business to be grown and developed and is scalable, someone will see it and want to be a part of it. That's the person you want to be part of your team.
So it's safe to say, I think, if somebody has that song that they've written, it comes straight from the heart, they go to somebody and they're like, oh no, that'll never be a hit. What you're saying is keep with that, do it yourself. And you never know, something good might come of it.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking a little more to the business side, but that dovetails into it. You're talking about creative, and I think artists should retain as much creative autonomy as they can, but they really need to figure out what they want. See, here's where people, the politically correct answer is, artists should retain all their creativity. And it's like, sure, absolutely. But if you want to make a living, if you want the marketplace to respond to your art, you may have to a degree, tailor your art for the marketplace. That's not saying you got to bastardize it or sell out. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you got to pay attention to what the market wants. Like Tesla is paying attention to what the car market wants, right? If there's a dude somewhere making horses and buggies to try to sell, you know, in a retail model, like that guy's not going to do well. And he may really love his horse and buggy situation, but it's like, yeah, the world's moved on, you know? Art is not dissimilar. There are trends in art. And if you want to get paid today, you got to sound like what might be distinctive, interesting, and compelling to the consumer today. That doesn't always mean commercial, because there are lots of artists who are successful, but they're not commercially successful in terms of radio airplay, but they have their niche. They have people who love them, who follow them. You know, look at Coulter Wall. Look at Sturgill Simpson. I mean, these guys aren't getting a ton of radio airplay, but they are selling out shows everywhere they go.
And that's a huge importance. I mean, you know, without the shows, you're in your basement.
Yeah, and it's where you make all your money, and it's where you have an opportunity to connect with fans, and moreover, new potential fans, right? Like, if you're an artist and you're looking at an audience of 500 people, there's a good chance at least 100 of those people didn't know who you were until tonight, and got dragged to that show by a friend or a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Like, that happens, right? So keep your fans happy, but win those new people over too, right? And the best way to do that is to be the most authentic version of yourself, because the people who get you will then get the best of you, as opposed to a purely tailor-made entertainment version of you, right?
Yeah. So have we seen the best of you yet?
Of me? Yeah, probably at least like 10 years ago. I don't know, it's been a while. No. I mean, physically, yeah, but that was 10 years ago. Yeah, there's going to be many more interesting things to come, many more projects in the future.
I'm happy to hear that. I know in Winnipeg soon, in November actually, George Kenyon will be here.
He'll be here.
Will we get to see you then too?
I will not be back for that show. I'm going to see George on some of his Alberta dates, but always enjoy my time in Winnipeg, especially when it's not December, January, February.
That's fair. What's next that you can tell us for Invictus Group?
Well, next I'm hopping on a plane first thing in the morning. I got 2 shows with Brett Kissel in Milton and Mississauga, so I'm going to go to those, and then we're off to Nashville for a big show with Brett down there and an announcement. So that's my next 72 hours and change.
Good. I'm excited. I have one more question that I need to ask you. It's about your socks. You are a very well-dressed man, and I need to know what type of socks you're wearing.
Well, luckily, I've actually got a pair of dress socks. I mean, when I'm traveling, you never know.
I like
Could have just as easily been something I had at the gym earlier today and just couldn't get out of before I went to the show. So, yeah, better that you caught me this way than some days, for sure.
But you do normally go with, you know, the suit that you're wearing, or the tie even that you're wearing, right?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, you gotta dress for comfort, because you have to be comfortable. But, you know, sometimes when you put on a suit, it's a little bit like a uniform, right? It feels like you're going into battle, right? And there's real utility to getting into that headspace in this business at times.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much,
Thank
Jim.
you.
I really appreciate it.
Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you too.